Super heavy tanks are one of the most popular topics I cover on this channel, with both real and fictional examples drawing in thousands of viewers. This fascination with super heavies should come as no surprise thanks to their immense size and often absurd designs pushing the limit of what is possible for an armored vehicle. Despite just about all of these vehicles being wildly different from one another, the idea behind their designs remain largely the same: to have an armored vehicle capable of an unstoppable advance into enemy lines. This was exactly what was going through the minds of engineers in the US as plans for an invasion into Europe were being discussed in September of 1943. From this would emerge a vehicle which has not only become one of the most well-known prototype tanks in history, but also the only super heavy tank to ever be built by the United States. This is the story of the T28 super heavy tank, America's Doom Turtle. Before we get into that though, I do have a brief announcement. Many of you enjoyed my previous merch designs based on the Sherman Firefly, and I am happy to announce some new T28 designs to go along with this video. You can buy these now through my new merch partner Gunji Graphics, and until the 4th of July, you can save 10% on anything on the store by using the code CONE10. Go check out all the designs available now using the link below, and not only will you help support my content by making me less reliant on sponsors or YouTube ad revenue, but you also get some awesome tank-themed merch. Enough about that though, let's get back to our main topic. Even amongst its peers of outlandish and often bizarre ideas, the design of the T28 remains quite unique. To truly understand what caused this massive deviation from more traditional US tank doctrine, which by late 1943 had shifted away from heavy tanks, to get to one of the heaviest tanks to ever leave the drawing board, we need to first travel across an ocean and go back in time to before the beginning of the Second World War. Following the Nazi Party's rise to power in Germany from the failing Weimar Republic, efforts to remilitarize, regardless of the Treaty of Versailles, began in earnest. While the parts of this we normally focus on usually involve the creation of tractors, which were actually tanks, or increased weapons production, not all of these projects were offensive in nature. Just like the French who built the Maginot Line along the French-German border, the Germans built defenses of their own in the west. Built to defend from a potential attack that would never come thanks to Germany forcing a French surrender less than 5 years after construction began, these fortifications would sit unused for several years with no one to defend them. Much to the dismay of Hitler and his generals, this would all change on June 6, 1944, when the Allied forces would successfully complete the largest naval invasion in history on the beaches of Normandy. With each day following the landings, the Germans would lose ever-increasing amounts of territory until the final push into Germany lay ahead of them. Between those advancing forces and Berlin, though, sat the very same defenses, now finally ready to see their purpose fulfilled to halt the Allied advance. However, even before a single landing craft reached French sand in 1944, the German West Wall was an obstacle Allied command knew they would need to overcome, and this is the context within which the T-28 was hatched. Development would begin in September of 1943 for a vehicle capable of assaulting fortifications, with the initial concept being of a vehicle with 8 inches (203.2 millimeters) of frontal armor, equipped with a 105mm cannon and propelled by the electric drive system found in the T1E1. 25 vehicles of this type were proposed by the Chief of Ordnance, with an estimated production time of 8 to 12 months. This was quickly reduced following a recommendation from the Army Ground Forces to only build 3 pilots, with the final authorization coming in March of 1944 for a total of 5 T-28s. While the number of vehicles had decreased, the armor specifications for the vehicle did not, with it being increased to 12 inches, 304.8 millimeters of frontal protection. This would make the T28 not only resistant, but nearly invulnerable to anything the Germans could throw at it. When tested against 8.8cm and 90mm projectiles, as well as explosive charges, this would be proven with the frontal armor casting performing well. This wall of steel would not just be able to take a hit, but with its 105mm T5E1 cannon, it could swing back hard. With the T13E1 APCBC round, it was estimated to be capable of punching through 5 feet of concrete, and against armored targets, it could defeat 235mm of armor with the T32 APCBC solid shot round, or up to 381mm of armor with the T29E3 APCR round. Thanks to this performance, any enemy tank unfortunate enough to linger in front of the T28 would be in for a very bad day. Other weapons proposed for the T28 were the 120mm and 155mm gun, but it wouldn't be until the later T30 and T34 heavy tanks that these would be fitted to a tank. The only other weaponry fitted to the T28 would be a 50 caliber heavy machine gun on a ring mount around the commander's cupola. With frontal hull castings supplied by the General Steel Castings Company and assembled by the Pacific Car and Foundry Company, who had previous experience with cast hulls for Sherman tanks, delivery of the first T-28 front casting was made on the 20th of June 1945, with the welding being completed in August of the same year. Finally, on the 21st of December, the first completed T-28 was shipped to Aberdeen Proving Ground, with a second following less than a month later on the 10th of January 1946. If you know anything about the timeline of World War II, you likely have spotted a problem with these dates, namely that by the time the two prototypes arrived for testing, the war was already over. Due to this, not only did the bunker buster not have any bunkers to bust, but the number of pilot vehicles was reduced to just 2 instead of the originally planned 5. So what exactly did the US military get for their time and money when these two tanks finally arrived over half a year too late for their planned theater of operations? Operated by a 4-man crew consisting of a driver, gunner, loader, and commander, the T-28 featured armor which, as mentioned earlier, was 12 inches thick on the front with a dome-shaped mantlet adding additional armor around the gun, which was mounted in a casemate style rather than in a turret. While not quite as thick on the sides, the tank still featured 2.5 inches of steel heavily sloped at a 58-degree angle on the upper sides with 1.5 inches on the lower hull. The lower hull protection was also increased thanks to the additional protection provided by the second pair of tracks, which we will touch on in just a moment. As for the rear of the vehicle, it featured just 2 inches of armor with a slight 9-degree angle. With this hefty armor and the 105mm main armament, this brought the tank to a combat weight of a staggering 194,000 pounds, or 97 tons. In order to support this weight, an interesting solution was decided upon for the running gear. Rather than do what the designers for the nearly 200-ton Mouse did by giving it tracks with a width of over 1 meter, the US designers instead opted to widen the tracks by essentially bolting on a second set of tracks. These track units were bolted in place on either side of the vehicle, with the final drives connecting to the inner tracks with a splined connection providing power to the outer drive sprockets. This allowed the crew to remove the outer tracks for transport or to allow the tank to continue advancing if it came across a path which was too narrow. Notably, this is actually portrayed in the movie Girls und Panzer der Film, although it would take upwards of 2 hours to remove the outer tracks rather than them simply popping off. After removal, the tracks would then be towed behind the tank until they were reinstalled. Unfortunately, the combination of the weight of the vehicle and the choice of the same power pack found in the T-26, which produced only 500 horsepower, meant that the top speed of the vehicle was only a paltry 8 miles per hour, with an even slower recommended sustained speed of only 7 miles per hour. While this may not have mattered as much when the primary target was intended to be immobile bunkers, this still meant traveling any significant distance would either take a long time or require some sort of transport vehicle to trailer the tank. Now that we've got a basic understanding of what the T28 prototypes brought to the table, we can move on to what became of these vehicles with the war now over. Before that, though, we need to address one of the biggest misconceptions surrounding this vehicle and its name. No doubt many of you have either already left a comment or have been quietly shouting at your screen with something along the lines of, "Why are you calling it the T28? Its real name is T95." While those of you saying that aren't entirely wrong, the designations given to this tank can be a little confusing depending on where you get your information from, as it changed more than once during development. When the initial procurement order for 5 vehicles was given in March of 1944, these were designated as Heavy Tank T28, and that name would remain until the following year. This is when the unusual design of the tank started to get some of the top brass scratching their heads. Unlike a traditional tank, the T28 did not feature a turret, with the casemate style being much more similar to vehicles like the German Stug or Soviet Su and ISU series. For that reason, it was decided to redesignate the tank as 105mm gun motor carriage T95, which now essentially classed the tank as a tank destroyer. While at first this name would stick for longer than the original designation, the slow speed and heavy armor still made this tank an awkward fit for the gun motor carriage name, and in June of 1946 the name was changed for the third and final time to Superheavy Tank T28. I should also note that whether it has the outer tracks mounted or not does not change this designation, as games like War Thunder or World of Tanks may lead you to believe. If you for some reason still need further proof, here's a photo of the tag on the back of the surviving T28 in Georgia. I know that was a bit of a long tangent, but this is probably one of the largest misconceptions I still see floating around, so I felt it was important to address. So now, with that out of the way, what became of the T28s? Well, as I described earlier, not only were these doomed turtles slow moving, but they also proved to be too slow off the drawing board to actually reach combat. Before the first T28 could even be completed, the Allies had already defeated the Siegfried Line they had been designed to assault. Led by General Joseph Collins, the 7th Corps broke through the line in September of 1944, creating pathways through the concrete dragon's teeth, in some cases by burying them with bulldozer-equipped Sherman tanks. While these defenses and the war on Germany itself were no longer a concern, that didn't mean the T28 was of no use, and it would prove to be a solid workhorse for several years. The first prototype was used for engineering tests at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, with the second being sent to Fort Knox and then later to Yuma, Arizona. The one at Aberdeen would undergo mobility trials, if you can call them that, crawling its way across 128 miles on the road and 413 miles on gravel for a total of 541 miles. If we break that number down based on the speed of the tank, those tests would have taken somewhere between 77 and 108 hours in drive time alone. With it consuming over 6 gallons of gasoline per mile, it also burned through almost 3,400 gallons as it crept around Maryland. It should come as no surprise that this was not viewed favorably, and although the gun was more than adequate, the rest of the tank was not. For the remainder of its service life, the T28 would be used for different experiments, such as load testing various things, including landing craft, and, in the case of the T28 which went to Arizona, testing floating bridges. With no other vehicle even coming close to their weight within the US inventory, this was a logical choice and gave valuable data regarding load capacity, which could have proven quite useful had the US needed to transport heavy tanks such as the T29 or T30. As the years passed, though, it seems that the tank was slowly forgotten, with both disappearing into the void that is the US military's surplus equipment, with one written off as being lost to a fire and another reportedly scrapped. One of these, the first prototype to be precise, was eventually rediscovered by a hunter who found it hidden away in some bushes. It was then recovered and displayed at the Patton Museum in Fort Knox, Kentucky. How it ended up in that bush is still unknown, but whoever was responsible for that could very well have saved this rare beast from the scrapyard. This hide-and-seek champion would remain in Kentucky for several decades before being moved to its current home at the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection within Fort Moore, formerly known as Fort Benning, in Georgia. Moving the tank proved to be more eventful than was likely expected, with a malfunction of the brakes on the truck giving the turtle a chance to try and make a break for it, falling off the trailer and into a ditch. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and the Superheavy sustained only minor damage during this escape attempt. As for the second T28, its fate, unfortunately, was reported accurately, with it being lost to a fire in 1947 shortly after arriving in Arizona, presumably being scrapped after this occurred. In the end, the T28 was simply too slow at everything, whether that be being built in time for World War II or its actual mobility. While a lumbering beast crafted from steel blasting through enemy defenses would certainly be a sight to behold, the fact remains that with a speed as slow as the T28, by the time it could reach an assault fortifications, lighter armored and faster tanks could have already done the job. Still, the T28 remains as a rare example of a real-world super heavy tank, making it among a select few to ever be built and tested. And who knows, maybe the lessons learned all those years ago will come in handy if the ever-evolving nature of tank designs returns us to 100-ton monsters. But what do you think of the T28? Would it have been successful had it reached Europe in time, or would it have been viewed as an utter failure? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to subscribe and check out my previous videos on super heavy tanks like the E100 and largely forgotten K-Wagen from the First World War. Don't forget to check out my new merch store as well to grab some T28 themed merch with the code CONE10 to save 10%. Thank you all for watching, and to my amazing YouTube members who help keep this channel going with their financial support. That's all I have for you today though, so check out one of the videos on your screen now, and I hope to see you there or in my next video.